I still remember that phone call. It broke the silence in my kitchen so abruptly, it was as if someone had fired a gun at point-blank range. It was 5 in the morning, the gray winter sky was still indistinguishable from the walls of my house, and the phone vibrated on the table so insistently, as if demanding that I wake up urgently, not only with my body, but also with that part of my soul that I had stubbornly buried for many years under a layer of habits and a quiet, tired life. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in over 20 years. Uncle Leisha. And here's what's strange. I wasn't surprised. It was as if somewhere deep down I had known for a long time that this day would come. Hello. My voice was hoarse and thick, as if I were talking after a sleepless night, even though I had gone to bed early yesterday. There was a pause on the other end, and then a quiet breath, almost a sob. Pash! He died after all. These words pierced me unexpectedly sharply. I wasn't ready, even though it seemed like I had been preparing for this my whole life. I knew this moment would come, but when it happens, your heart still sinks somewhere deep down, like in an elevator whose cable winch has broken. Understand, I said, and for some reason, looked at the refrigerator as if it might hold the answer to what to do next. When is the funeral? Tomorrow. And, Pasha, you need to come. He paused, and I heard something in his voice that made me get up from my chair. Fear. No, not even fear. The confusion of a grown man who had been broken by life many times before, but now it had hit him so hard that he was as defenseless as a child. Did something happen? I asked. Pause. A long one. I could hear him breathing. They found something in his house, and you need to see it. A chill ran down my spine. What thing? I can't explain over the phone. Pasha, come over. It's about you. Those 3 words, it's about you, hit me like a punch in the chest. And I realized I had no choice. I had to go to the place I had sworn never to return to. The trip took 4 hours. All that time, I had a strange feeling. It was as if I was not going to the funeral of a person I hated, avoided, and tried to erase from my memory, but to a meeting with something that had been hanging over me my whole life. The city looked the same as it had 20 years ago, only I was different. Grown up, tired, with wrinkles around my eyes and hands that trembled as I turned off the engine near the house where I'd spent my childhood. The house stood on the outskirts, old, gray-yellow, peeling. But I felt something ache inside. No place in the world smells like the place where you grew up. It's the smell of a life you can't get back and pain you can't forget. Uncle Leisha was standing by the gate. He had aged and was stooped. When I got out of the car, he didn't say a word, just came up and hugged me tightly. I didn't hug him back, not right away. But after a couple of seconds, my arms rose on their own, as if my body remembered that this man was the only warm piece of my past. I'm sorry for what happened, he said, stepping back. But, Pasha, you have to come in, before we go to the cemetery. I was only a few meters away from the house, but it was hard to walk, as if my feet were stuck to the ground. There's something. He faltered again. I didn't touch it. I left it as it was. I went into the house, and in a second, I realized what he meant. There was a box on the kitchen table. A large, old wooden box. The very one I remembered from my childhood. My mother always asked me not to open it, but I was 6 at the time, and I listened to her not because I believed in the forbidden, but because I knew that if I disobeyed, my father would hit me. Back then, he beat me for everything, even for things I didn't do. I walked over to the box. The wood was dark and cracked around the edges. On the lid was a metal plate with an engraving that I hadn't noticed before. P.E. My initials. Left it to you, Uncle Leisha said quietly. The silence in the room was so thick you could almost touch it. I exhaled. I brought my palm to the lid, and at that moment, I felt something heavy inside, not physically, but emotionally. It was as if this box contained the answers I had feared more than anything else in my entire life. I opened it, and the moment the lid lifted, my heart stopped, because on top was a photograph I had never seen before. But it was me in it. Me and a woman I didn't know. She was holding me in her arms. Young, beautiful, kind eyes. Not my mother's, not the ones I was used to seeing. But I looked at her and felt a strange, sharp recognition. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, were 3 words. Forgive-moi, son. And at that moment, I realized that my whole life had been built on a lie, and that ahead of me lay answers that could destroy everything I believed about myself. I stood there with this photo in my hands, and time seemed to dissolve. My hand was shaking so much that the edges of the photo trembled slightly. There was a smile on the woman's face, not a broad, stage smile, but a genuine, homely one. The smile of someone holding a child, as if afraid of dropping not a body, but a future. "Who is this?" I whispered, although the question was rhetorical. Uncle Lisha couldn't have known. No one could have. "We hoped you would tell us," he said quietly. "We." So he and my father. It was strange to hear father and hope. Those words had never been in the same sentence in my mind. I carefully put the photo aside and began to sort through the contents of the box. On top were photographs. Lots of them. Some were old and yellowed. Others were newer, ones that could have been taken 15 years ago. But they all showed the same thing. Me small at different ages, and her, that woman. In one, she was holding my hand. In another, I was sleeping on her lap. In a third, we were walking down an alley, and I was telling her something, waving my arms. And next to us is my father. Nowhere. Not in a single photo. I found a first text, a letter folded in 4. My father's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. Uniform, heavy letters, as if he pressed the pen harder than necessary. If you were reading this, it means I didn't have time to tell you the truth while I was alive. And maybe that's for the best. I felt the ground slipping away from under my feet. You should know, she didn't abandon you. I took you away from her. Out of stupidity, out of jealousy, and out of fear that I would lose the only thing I had that was real. The paper in my hands trembled. I took you when you were 1 year old. She was in the hospital. She didn't know. I told her you had died. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened so much that I instinctively tried to draw in more air. I did it because I was afraid. She wanted to take you and leave. And I was already drinking back then. I was a nobody, and I thought you were the only thing that would give me a chance to become a man. But I didn't. I wanted to throw the letter away. Close the box. Leave. But my fingers clung to the sheet as if it were my last connection to the world I consider my own. She looked for you. For a long time. A very long time. I hid you from everyone. I lied to you, lied to her, lied to myself. She came to the city. She stood under the windows. You were little. You didn't remember. She watched you grow up, and I pretended she wasn't there. I felt nauseous. I sat down on the floor. This can't be true, I managed to say. Uncle Lisha exhaled heavily and sat down next to me. Pash, I tried to tell you many times. But your father, he wasn't human back then. He threatened me. He fell silent. I was a coward. I am sorry. I cover my face with my hands. My mother, my real mother, not the one who raised me. She was my stepmother, my father's wife, a woman who endured him no less than I did. But she wasn't the one who gave me life, the woman in the photo, and she was looking for me. For years. I raised my head. Is she alive? Uncle Lisha looked away, and that movement was enough to make my heart sink. Need to see something else, he said and stood up. Let's go. We drove to the old house on the other side of town. The road stretched on endlessly. I looked out the window and saw the city where I once lived, gray 5-story buildings, broken sidewalks, endless kiosks, the stairwells where I hid from my father, the forest where my uncle and I once hid when he got drunk and went looking for me. Every turn echoed with the past. How old was he? I asked, looking ahead. 47. I nodded, and only a minute later did I realize he died younger than I had imagined. The man who seemed like the eternal monster of my childhood turned out to be just broken. And how? I asked. Heart attack. At night. Uncle Lisha spoke dryly, evenly. His heart had been failing for a long time. But you know, he never sought treatment. I said nothing. And for the first time in many years, I felt neither anger nor even relief, but something like emptiness. It was as if the hatred I had carried all my life was a brick wall, and now it had collapsed, leaving behind a cloud of dust in which it was impossible to see what lay ahead. We pulled up to a small wooden house. The windows were closed. The door was peeling. It looked like no one had lived there for a long time. This is, I began. Her house, said Uncle Leisha. Your mother's. My heart skipped a beat. Wait, she lived here? All this time, he nodded slowly. Then he added, and she died here too. The world seemed to shift. I froze. WH what? Pasha. He put his hand on my shoulder. She died 5 years ago. She never managed to find you, although she searched until the very end. I stood motionless. I just stared at the closed windows and felt my chest tighten so much that I almost collapsed. The woman who held me in her arms. The woman whose eyes I recognized at first glance in the photograph. The woman who wanted me back. She lived only 3 hours away from me. All these years, and she died without ever seeing me. Why? I swallowed. Why didn't anyone tell me? Uncle Leisha lowered his head. Your father was there. Always. He controlled everyone who could know. Everyone. I was ashamed, but He sighed. I was afraid. Of the pain, of him, and of ruining your life. But he looked me in the eyes. Now it's all over. I walked to the porch. The door was locked, but Uncle Leisha took out a key. The house is empty, but there's something you need to see. He opened the door, and when I stepped inside, the air changed. It smelled warm, as if time had frozen. It smelled of women's perfume, long since faded, but still noticeable, like a scent from the past. It smelled of tea, books, silence, loneliness. I walked deeper inside. There were photographs hanging on the walls. Uncle Leisha stopped at the door to a room. Here, he said. I went in. It was a small bedroom. There was an album on the table. Thick, old, with an embossed cover. I approached it, opened it, and froze. All the pages were filled with my photographs. My childhood, my school years, my first steps, kindergarten graduation, photos I never had. She collected them, all of them. She found them. She bought them through acquaintances. She photographed them from afar. She followed my life to be closer to me in some way. And among the pages, letters, unsent, dozens of them. Pashenka, you're already 7. You went to school today. I was in the crowd. I heard you were sick again. Take care of yourself, my boy. I was told you've grown tall, like your father. Only I hope, Kinder. I couldn't take it anymore. I sat down on the bed and cried for the first time in many years. Not quietly, not politely, but the way people cry when they suddenly realize that their whole life has been someone else's script. My uncle didn't touch me. He just stood there silently. When the tears dried up, I looked up. Why? My voice broke. Why didn't she take me? Why didn't she tell me? My uncle shook his head. She tried. But your father, he sighed heavily. He threatened her. He threatened you. And at some point, she realized that if she kept pushing, he might do something terrible. And she couldn't risk you. I covered my face with my hands. Did she die alone? I asked after a long pause. Yes, he said quietly, but not without faith. She hoped until the end that you would find her yourself. At some point, when you grew up, she left you something. What? He took a small envelope out of the drawer. She wrote this letter every year and changed the content. The last one was a month before she died. I took the envelope. It was light, yellowed at the edges. I tore it open, and when I unfolded the sheet of paper, my hand trembled. Pasha, if you're reading this, it means you found out the truth after all. And that means I can say the most important thing. I never stopped loving you. And if you're angry, you have every right to be. But know this, I haven't lived a single day without thinking about you. And if I had to choose between losing you and putting you in danger, I chose the former. It hurts me, but I'm not ashamed. I did what any mother would do. I felt something break inside me completely. I don't know if you'll ever come here, but if you do, know that I've been waiting. Full stop. I folded the letter carefully, not because I was afraid of tearing it, but because my hand was shaking too much. And it was at that moment that I noticed one detail. Under the table, right by the leg, lay a small old tape recorder. I picked it up. I pressed the button. And in the next moment, her voice filled the room. Quiet, tired, but familiar, as if I had heard it all my life. Pasha, if you hear this, it means everything worked out. It means the truth came out. My eyes stung. I want to tell you something I didn't dare to write. The tape recorder crackled. Your father, He didn't just take you. He didn't do it alone. And at that moment, my world shook again. Pasha! There was another shadow. Another person. Someone who had an interest in you disappearing from my life. I froze. And you know him. The rustle of film. She seemed to be gathering her courage. It was... The recording cut off. I pressed the button again. Then again. Only silence. Damn. I whispered. This can't be. Uncle Leisha turned pale. Ow. How can the recording cut out? Was there something there? There was, I said. And it changes everything. I understood one thing. The person who was involved in my disappearance is alive. And I know him. I left the room, my legs feeling like jelly. The world seemed to dissolve, and all I could hear was her broken voice, suspended somewhere between the past and the present. And you know him. It was... And silence. It was as if fate itself had decided to cut off the recording at the moment when the truth was just a step away. I stood in the middle of the narrow hallway of her house, and suddenly it seemed to me that the walls were closer together than they had been a minute ago. The air became thick and heavy. The sun shining through the small window seemed too bright, almost painful. We have to take the tape recorder, I said, turning to my uncle. And the box. And the album. Everything. He nodded, but I noticed something else in his eyes. Something hidden. And suddenly it dawned on me. You know something, I said quietly, almost in a whisper. Pasha. He looked away. I don't know everything. Really. But you know part of it. He nodded slowly and took a step back, as if he needed space to say what he had been keeping inside for many years. I don't know who the second person was. He exhaled heavily. But I know that your father had someone he relied on, someone who helped him during those years, someone who supported his decisions, even the darkest ones. Who? I asked, clenching my fists. I'm not 100% sure, and I don't want to lie. But he swallowed. There's one person who disappeared around the same time your mother disappeared from your life. Too many coincidences. Name. My voice sounded like someone else's. My uncle walked past me, stopped, and leaned his hands on the windowsill, as if he needed to hold on to keep from falling. If I tell you, you have to be sure you're ready to hear it. Go ahead. He turned around. His eyes were red, either from age or from telling the truth, which hurt him too. Andrei Sergeyevich. I froze. The world inside me shattered like glass. Who? I asked, even though I understood perfectly well. Your godfather, he said. Your father's best friend. I stood motionless. Something clicked in my head, and all the memories I had stubbornly pushed away suddenly came flooding back. I remembered sitting on his lap as a little boy. How he gave me expensive toys that my father could never afford. How he said to my stepmother, "Take care of Pasha. He's a golden boy." How my father, as soon as he saw him, would straighten his shoulders as if he felt stronger when he was around him. And then there was this strange feeling that I couldn't explain as a child. When Andrei Sergeyevich came to the house, my father drank less. But he looked at me differently, not with an angry look, but possessively. I swallowed. He was almost family. My uncle looked away. Almost doesn't mean he couldn't have been involved. You know, people do terrible things for the strangest reasons. But I could barely hear him, because another forgotten episode suddenly popped into my head. I was about 5 years old. We were at Andrei Sergeyevich's house. He was sitting with me in the room, showing me some photographs. And then he said quietly, almost in a whisper, "You look like her very much." I didn't think much of it at the time. But now that phrase hit me like a bolt of lightning. On her, my real mother. He knew what she looked like. He had seen her. And that means, my God, I said. He knew she was looking for me. He knew everything. And he kept quiet. Maybe, my uncle muttered. Maybe and more. I looked up. Is he alive? Yes. Leisha exhaled. And he lives nearby, still in his house across the river. I nodded. But something new, heavy, and frightening was raging inside me. Anger and fear mixed with something I could no longer name other than premonition. We'll go see him, I said. Today. Uncle Leisha raised his hand sharply. No, Basa. It's dangerous. There's nothing more dangerous than the truth, I said, surprised at my own voice. It was steady, cold, as if I had made the decision not now, but many years ago. You don't understand? My uncle took a step toward me. He's not the same person he used to be. He has connections, money, his own security, you could say. He, Pasha, he won't forgive you if you dig up the past. I don't intend to dig up the past. I intend to bring her to light. We were silent for a minute. The room was so quiet that I could hear the old clock ticking on the wall. My uncle finally sighed, exhausted, as if he had aged right before my eyes. All right, he said, rubbing his face with his hands. But first, the funeral. We have to finish what we have to do. And then we'll do what needs to be done. I nodded. He was right. My father was dead. And whatever I thought, he had to be buried to close at least one chapter of this nightmare. But as we were leaving my mother's house, I glanced back at the room one more time, and I noticed something. There was a photo frame on the shelf. Small, modest. It was me. I must have been about 10 years old. And next to me was her, my mother. But the problem was that such a photograph couldn't exist. We had never met. I picked it up, and only then did I notice that the photo was a montage. It was clearly not professionally done, but it was done with love, so that she could at least be close to me in this way. And on the back, there was an inscription, in that same neat, careful handwriting. We'll still be together, at least like this. I felt something tighten inside me again. But now it was different. Not pain, with determination. I was a different person by the time I arrived at the funeral. I sat in the car, looked ahead, and felt as if everything around me had turned 180 degrees. I was going to the funeral of the man who had destroyed my life. And on the same day, I was going to meet the person who may have helped him do it. But then I suddenly realized something even more terrifying. If two people were involved in the story, what if I was the motive? Not as a child, but as the heir. The meaning eluded me, but the shadow of this assumption already ran down my spine. The cemetery was deserted. The funeral was modest. About 6 people came, 2 elderly neighbors, some distant relatives whose names I didn't even know, and me. When the coffin was lowered, I stood motionless. And for the first time, I said aloud what I had avoided my whole life. I forgive you. And at that moment, I was suddenly overcome by a strange emotion that I hadn't expected. Not relief, not pain, but emptiness, as if I had closed a book that would never have any new chapters. After the funeral, my uncle and I loaded the box and the tape recorder into my car. He asked, "Are you sure you want to go to him today?" I started the engine. Yes. Then, be prepared. For what? He looked at me with a long, heavy gaze. For the fact that Andrei Sergeyevich won't be surprised by your arrival. And perhaps, he fell silent. Perhaps he has been waiting for this day. We drove for a long time. Across the river, over the old bridge. The road there was unpaved with potholes. The wind grew stronger, and the bare branches of the trees knocked on the roof of the car. Andrei Sergeyevich's house was large. Too large for a simple pensioner. A high fence, video cameras, wrought iron gates, and a nice car in front of the house. We stopped. I got out first. A man immediately came to the gate, tall, strong, about 40 years old. A security guard. "Who are you here to see?" he said dryly. "Is Andrei Sergeyevich home?" I asked. "Who's asking?" "Tell him, Pavel." I paused. "Pavel Ilyich Kotov." The man blinked. His gaze softened slightly. It was as if he recognized the surname. "Wait a minute." He left. The minutes dragged on. I could feel the tension building under my skin. My fingers trembled in my pockets. And suddenly the gate opened smoothly. And there he was, standing in the doorway. Andrei Sergeyevich. Older, slightly graying, but just as confident in himself, in his gait, in his expression. He saw me and smiled. It was a calm, controlled smile, like that of a man who sees not a problem, but a move he has been waiting for. "Hello, Pasha," he said. "I knew you would come one day." And at that moment, I realized 2 things. First, he really was involved. Second, what I know about him now is only the tip of the iceberg, because his eyes expressed not confusion or fear, but a strange, frightening confidence. It was as if what was about to happen was not a confrontation, but a plan that he had been preparing for many years. He stood before me confidently, almost majestically, like a man who doesn't explain himself, but invites you in. His smile was subtle, restrained, slightly crooked, as if he were watching something he had long since calculated. I felt everything inside me tense up. It's like when you walk into a dark barn and you know someone is there, but you can't see who. "Come in," he said. "You have a lot to hear." A lot. I instinctively looked at Uncle Lisha. He shook his head slightly and whispered, "Pasha, don't stay alone with him." But I already knew I would have to. 15 minutes, I said quietly. "If I don't come out, come in." My uncle clenched his jaw but nodded. I walked through the gate. It closed softly behind me without a sound. It was as if it weren't a gate, but a curtain separating one life from another. The house inside was too neat, too clean, too perfect, as if it were maintained not by a person, but by a specialist in expensive interior design magazines. "Take off your jacket," said Andrei Sergeyevich. "Your hands are shaking." I ignored the comment. He walked into the spacious living room and gestured toward an armchair. "Sit down. We've been meaning to talk for a long time." I remained standing. "You were second," I said. He didn't blink. "Going straight to the end?" He smiled softly. "All right, so be it. Yes, Pasha. I was the second man in that story." My insides clenched. "Why?" I squeezed out. "What could you possibly have in common with separating a child from his mother?" He looked at me so intently, as if he saw not a grown man, but that little, frightened boy he once held in his arms. "Pasha, do you really think it was that simple? That your father was a monster and I was his accomplice? Wasn't it?" He smiled. Not an angry smile, but a tired one. "No, it was much worse than that." I felt a chill between my shoulder blades. "Sit down," he said quietly. "You can't listen to what I'm about to say while standing." This time I sat down. He looked out the window, as if remembering. "Your mother was a wonderful woman. Kind, smart, gentle. She was a light. And your father was drawn to that light. Like a moth. Only moths always get burned." "He hated her," I said. "He loved her," he replied. "And he hated her for seeing him for who he really was." I clenched my fists. "She was looking for me." "She did," he nodded. "She searched for years. And do you know why she couldn't find me? Because you wouldn't let her." He turned to me. His eyes suddenly darkened. They became heavy. "No, pasa. Because she was looking for the wrong person." I frowned. "What do you mean? Not what she was looking for." He walked over to the bar, poured himself some whiskey, but didn't drink it. He just held the glass, as if doing so out of habit. "She was looking for a boy. One boy." He sighed deeply. "But in reality, there were two." I stopped breathing. "What? Two? Pasha," he repeated. "Two lives. Two children. You were born together." I slowly got to my feet. "That," I swallowed. "That can't be. I don't have a brother." He looked at me sternly, straightforwardly. "Yes, you do. And you always have." The room spun. I grabbed the armrest. You're lying." "There's no point," he said dryly. "You're already here, and the truth will come out. It's time you heard it." I stood there as if I had been struck. The words didn't fit in my head. Everything I knew about myself was crumbling. "Where is he?" I asked quietly. "Where is my brother?" Something strange flashed in his eyes. A mixture of regret and fear. "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" My voice broke. He finally put the glass down on the table. He came closer. He leaned forward slightly to be at the same level as me. "Your father took only you. The other boy disappeared. That same night. Someone took him, and it wasn't me." I took a step back. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to know," he replied firmly. "Everyone thought you were the only one, but your mother knew about both of them, and she died without ever finding out what happened to the other boy." "But why did my father take one and not the other?" Andrei Sergeyevich looked away. "Because the second one wasn't his." The ringing in his ears became deafening. "What?" He looked at me almost gently, like a doctor telling a patient the truth about their diagnosis. "Your mother was seeing two men at the time, and it so happened that she was pregnant with twins. One boy, you, was your father's child. The other was not. And when your father found out, he fell silent, and there was no need to continue." I understood. He took only his I whispered. "Out of jealousy, out of rage," he corrected, "and out of a desire to take what he could control." I felt everything inside me collapse. "Who took the second one?" I asked. Who? Andre took a step toward me, like a surgeon toward a wounded patient. Pasha. The worst answer is the one that sounds like, we don't know. They were looking for him. His trail went cold. He disappeared as if he had been cut out of the photographs of his life with a knife. I clenched my fists until they hurt. Was he alive? Dead? Nearby? Far away? And why didn't my mother ever mention it? Why did my father remain silent? Why did I live for 20 years without knowing that somewhere there was a person with my face? And you know what's most important? Andre said quietly, coming closer. I looked up at him. I think he's alive. And I think he's known about you for a long time. My heart skipped a beat. Why do you think that? Andre looked at me with a long, cold, confident gaze. Because a couple of years ago, someone started taking an interest in you, gathering information, tracking you, going through archives, finding out about your mother. And I highly doubt it was the police or journalists. He paused. This is the style of someone who is looking for their own blood. I held my breath. Who do you think he is? Andrei Sergeyevich leaned toward me slightly and whispered, your brother. I think he's been around for a long time, and I think he's not the one you want to meet. At that moment, the living room door clicked quietly. We both turned around, and standing at the entrance was the same security guard who had opened the gate for us. Only now he was holding a phone. Andrei Sergeyevich. He said in an even voice. There was a call. They said to tell you. He paused and looked at me. That the second one is in town too. Andrei's expression changed instantly. Who called? He asked sharply. But the guard was already looking only at me. And also, they said, tell him we met much earlier than he thinks. My world turned upside down. The first thought struck me like lightning. He had already seen me. The second, I didn't recognize him. The third, the most frightening. He could have been anyone. A doctor, a neighbor, a man in a store, a colleague, anyone. And he'd been watching all this time. The room grew cold. Even though the radiators were humming and the fireplace was warm, an icy chill ran down my spine. The guard's words hung in the air like ash after an explosion. The second one is in town too. I looked at Andrei Sergeyevich and, for the first time ever, saw not confidence or control in his eyes, but anxiety. Real, human anxiety. He exhaled quietly, ran his hand over his face, and said, Pasha, we need to talk quickly. Everything may be different than you think. What exactly? I asked, feeling a sense of alarm begin to pound in my chest. He walked over to the table, took a folder out of the drawer, and threw it in front of me. I've been collecting this for years. After your mother died, after your father stopped listening to me, after everything fell apart, I suspected that the second boy also had his own story, his own path, and it seemed to me that he might come back. I opened the folder. There were newspaper clippings, printouts, surveillance photos, private investigator reports, pencil notes. Everything was connected by one person, unidentified man, age approximately 30 to 35. And next to 3 photos, in Andrei Sergeyevich's handwriting, resembles P. 3 different photos, 3 different places, and in each one, a man seen from behind or in shadow. But something in his gait, in the shape of his head, in the width of his shoulders, everything screamed similarity. I felt my fingers grow cold. Are you saying? I began. He interrupted, that he was watching you for a long time. And now, when my father died, when the truth began to surface, he fell silent. He decided to come out of the shadows? Andrei Sergeyevich nodded. Pasha, he said hoarsely. You wondered why I helped your father that night. I looked at him. That thought had been stuck in my head from the moment I entered the house. Why? He looked away, and for the first time ever, his confidence vanished. Because I loved your mother. Too much to be smart, and too late to be useful. I remained silent. She was my life, he continued. Not a romance, not a fling. She was the person who made me who I am. But she didn't need me. She loved someone else. Your father. And when it all fell apart, when she wanted to leave him, when she found out she was pregnant, I was there, but not on the right side. He grimaced, and that night, he slumped into a chair as if he had lost his strength. I thought I was saving her. From him. from myself, from the world. I thought that if I intervened, she would understand, appreciate it, come back. Did it work? I asked quietly. I lost her forever, he whispered. And then I lost you too. And I realized what I had done. There was a long pause. Is that why you were following my brother? I asked. I was following both of you. He corrected himself. But the second one turned out to be like smoke. Impossible to catch. I looked at the folder again. Inside were two photographs that sent a chill down my spine. In one, a man in a hoodie was looking at the clinic. I was there that day, getting my blood pressure checked. In the second, a man was standing far away from my house. A month ago. At the time, I thought it was a neighbor. He was closer than I thought. When we left the house, the sky had darkened. Snow began to fall in small, sharp flakes, and the wind cut through the skin. Pasha, Uncle Lisha approached me as I closed the car door. Are you alive? For now, I exhaled. Did he say anything important? I looked at him. Yes, I said, but not just important. Things that change everything. He wanted to ask, but I raised my hand. Later. Right now, I need to think. We drove about 100 meters away from the house when I suddenly noticed a shadow in the yard. A person. He stood at a distance, almost motionless, like a statue. I turned on the headlights, and he disappeared around the corner. Did you see that? I asked. I saw him, my uncle replied quietly. I saw him very clearly. We drove back to the city. The road was empty, as if the whole world had frozen. I looked out the window and thought, what if my brother really is nearby? What if he's not seeking revenge, but justice? Or the opposite? And then, like a bolt of lightning, a thought struck me. Lisha, I turned to him. He said that our father threatened everyone back then. Who else could have known about the second child? He crumpled his gloves in his hands, then said, Pasha, there was another woman. Who? The one who worked as a nurse at the hospital where your mother gave birth. My father pressured her. He was afraid of publicity. He was afraid she would talk. Her name, Olga Sergeevna. And suddenly the puzzle fell into place. I had heard that name a month ago when I was getting tested. Hello, I'll be happy to help you. My name is Olga Sergeevna, a nurse at a modern clinic, a woman in her 50s. She looked at me too intently, repeating too often, you look very much like someone. I smiled then and forgot about it. Now the smile froze inside. Lisha, I whispered. We have to go to her. Now. Yes. Immediately. We got her house late in the evening. An apartment building, an entrance hall, dim light. She opened the door right away, as if she had been waiting. Well, she said, her voice trembling. I knew you would come. Why? I asked. She looked at me with longing, with regret. Because he was here. Today. I felt the ground slip away from under my feet. What did he say? I asked. She slowly walked into the room, and we followed her. There was hot tea on the table. It was as if she knew there would be two of us. He said it was too late, that the truth had already come out, that he had been watching you for a long time, and that he wanted to get to know you differently. Where is he now? She looked at me with pity, very genuine. You don't understand. She sat down, folded her arms, and her voice became quiet, like that of someone carrying a heavy burden. He didn't come to meet me. He came to say goodbye. I froze. What? She pulled out a small piece of paper. She handed it to me, with trembling fingers. He said that the road ahead is yours, and he is no longer here. I read the note. There were two of us, but you were always stronger. Don't look for me. I saw you, and that was enough for me. Don't hold a grudge. Live for both of us. Below are the initials. Pekka, the same as mine. I sank into a chair. Quietly. I couldn't feel my legs. I swallowed. He died. She nodded. Yes. He was sick. For a long time. And seriously. He knew he didn't have long to live. He wanted to see you. Just once. Even from a distance. He said, I want to know that he's living better than I am. Uncle Lisha sat down next to me and put his hand on my shoulder. And I just stared at the note, and everything around me sank into a heavy, long, thick fog. That man is my brother, the shadow of my life, a reflection that walked the world separately from me. He was close by, for years, and I never thought that the meeting would happen like this, that would be invisible and to last. We left the building when the snow had already settled in a soft layer on the ground. The street was empty. The city was quiet, and I felt like a different person. Uncle Lisha was silent for a long time before asking, "What are you thinking about?" I looked up at the sky, about the fact that sometimes the truth doesn't come to give answers. It comes to give choices. He frowned. "What kind?" I breathed in the cold air. To live in the past, or to move on. We stood in silence, and I suddenly felt something strange, not heaviness, no, but a bright, quiet sadness, with a hint of gratitude. I knew I would not meet him. I would not recognize his voice. I wouldn't be able to compare eyes. I wouldn't hear what my own laughter sounded like in another person. But I learned the most important thing. There were two of us, but he gave me the chance to be one. And now it's my turn to live life to the fullest. Not in the shadows, not in fear of someone else's truth, but truly, for myself and for him. I slowly walked forward along the snow-covered street. I heard my uncle's footsteps beside me. I heard the wind, and for the first time in many years, the silence inside was calm. Because the past was no longer chasing me. It just stood there beside me, like a shadow that ceased to be frightening when light entered it. And at that moment, I realized, you can't change how your story began, but you can change how it ends. And I chose an ending that continues, an ending that becomes a beginning, an ending in which I finally became myself.